Nah, because this is where it gets scary. Drake fans are now moving like they want a courtroom receipt for every allegation. But the loudest people screaming "show the proof" are the same ones panicking the moment anybody even hints they might actually speak. And the wild part is, it's not even just random trolls doing it anymore. You've got Glasses Malone doubling down on camera, basically telling the stands, stop begging me to kick the door in because you're not gonna like what comes out on the other side. While the internet is also juggling this whole ASAP Rocky wants to fight Drake clip like it's a fun side quest. Except it's not a side quest. It's the same story from 3 different angles: pressure, pride, and narrative control. Because if you're Drake right now, your personal stakes are obvious: reputation, brand deals, relationships, the whole untouchable aura. But culturally, it's bigger than Drake. It's about what the fan bases have turned rap into, a 24/7 propaganda war where numbers are weapons and evidence is only demanded when it benefits your side. And systemically, that's the ugliest layer, because the moment people start treating blogs, streamers, and industry friends like private investigators, you create an ecosystem where rumor gets monetized, and then everybody acts shocked when it turns into threats, lawsuits, or somebody crashing out over something they half understood from a clip. And stay with me, because later in this video, I'm going to explain the one part nobody wants to talk about. The moment you publicly demand evidence, you're not asking for truth. You're accidentally asking for escalation, discovery, and consequences that don't just hit Drake. They hit everybody connected to the story, including the people who swear they're just fans. And that's where this whole thing turns from messy to catastrophic, because drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. So here's what's happening right now and why the timing matters. We're coming off a period where every single Drake-related headline gets turned into a referendum on the beef, on who's up, on who's outside, and on whether the culture still sees Drake as the guy who can bend the room just by entering it. And while Drake has always had a loud fan base, the last stretch has put them in a weird position. They're defending the brand more than they're defending the music. That's not even a diss, that's just the behavior. The conversation is less, did you hear that verse, and more, look at the chart, look at the stream, look at the narrative, look at the angle. At the same time, you've got multiple media personalities and podcasters taking clips and running with them like they're court filings. Glasses Malone is one of the names in the middle of this because he's been speaking in a very I know something tone about how stories get seeded, how narratives get financed, and how fans keep pushing him to say it with your chest and provide hard proof. Then you've got people like Poetic Flacco in the mix pushing back, basically calling it paranoid, delusional, or just clout-based. And then you've got Kid Mero on radio/podcast style platforms reacting to how reckless it is for artists to throw gang-coded or retaliation-coded posts online like it's casual content. Now layer that with the ASAP Rocky moment, where a fight question gets asked and the internet does what it always does, turns it into a scoreboard. Who wins? Who's tougher? Who's more real? And the reason I'm putting that in the same video as the stop asking for evidence warning is because it's all the same impulse. Fans trying to force a real-world consequence out of a media moment. And I want to be clear, some of what's being thrown around is alleged, some of it is speculation, and some of it is straight-up internet cosplay. But the stakes are real, because once this kind of talk catches fire, it doesn't stay in comment sections. It hits reputations, business, legal teams, and sometimes the safety of people who didn't sign up to be main characters. So the big question is simple. Why are Drake fans demanding evidence so aggressively, and why are people warning them to stop like they're about to accidentally summon something they can't control? Let's start with the surface level stuff you can actually see, because the internet loves to act like everything is mystery when half of it is right there on 4K on your screen. First piece of evidence is the Glasses Malone clips themselves, the ones circulating from podcasts and repost pages. In those clips, he's not speaking like somebody telling a joke. He's speaking like somebody irritated that fans keep tagging him, DMing him, and basically chanting, "Prove it, prove it, prove it." And his response isn't to back down, it's to double down. The energy is, I meant what I said, and if you keep pushing, don't cry about what happens next. That's a very specific posture, because if you're completely bluffing, you usually soften, you add distance, you do the "I'm just asking questions." He doesn't. He leans in. Now, does that automatically make him right? No, and this is where the Drake fans always try to flip logic on its head. They'll say, if you don't have documents, it's fake. But then in the same breath, they'll treat a vague insinuation as a full confession when it's aimed at somebody they don't like. So the important part of that clip isn't even the allegation itself, it's the dynamic. The fan base is trying to force a receipts culture moment, and the person being pressured is warning them that receipts don't just embarrass a celebrity. Receipts can trigger lawsuits. Receipts can trigger retaliation. Receipts can trigger people trying to handle it instead of letting it be content. Does everybody understand how crazy that is? Second piece of surface evidence is the way the conversation instantly becomes a numbers and narratives war. You've got chart/streaming accounts and repost pages throwing around milestones like gasoline. In the competitor script you provided, there's talk of Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us hitting a massive Spotify milestone and being framed as a cultural phenomenon. I'm going to phrase this carefully. There have been viral posts and commentary claiming huge streaming milestones for that record. And regardless of the exact number on any given day, what's not debatable is the visibility. That song became a catchphrase, a sports stadium moment, a meme engine, and a cultural stamp. You can feel how that irritates the Spreadsheet 6 crowd, because it's not just streams, it's moments. It's people outside the rap bubble using it like a slogan. That's why the fan base gets extra defensive, because you can't argue a vibe into disappearing. And the third piece of surface evidence is the Rocky clip. A$AP Rocky gets asked a question about fighting Drake, and the internet treats it like a pay-per-view trailer. That matters because it shows you where the audience's head is. The audience is primed for confrontation, not just lyrical confrontation, but real-world confrontation. And when your audience is in that mode, even a joking, "yeah, I'd fight him," can get interpreted as a green light for chaos. That's why these harmless clips aren't harmless. They become rally points for people who already want the story to become physical, legal, or permanently reputational. So you've got three visible ingredients: a media figure doubling down and warning people to stop pushing, a culture moment that keeps getting used as a scoreboard, and a viral fight conversation that adds gasoline to an already tense ecosystem. And if you're watching all that and thinking, okay, it's just internet drama, I'm telling you right now, the next layer is where it gets uglier, because the people reacting to it are basically admitting what time it is, and it's not music discussion time. And oh, do I have more for you. Because the stands keep playing this game where they pretend every warning is clout, every pushback is hate, and every uncomfortable question is a smear. But then they turn around and spend 8 hours in a space or a subreddit trying to crowdsource a case file like they're the FBI. And I'm going to give you something specific in the next part, the exact way this story is being talked about by other media voices, and why even the people who don't fully believe Glass is Malone are still saying, yo, stop talking like this online. Drake's fan base is not going to like how that sounds, because it implies the problem isn't the allegation, it's the machine they've helped build. Now let's get into the cultural layer, because this is where the inside baseball energy starts showing. First cultural piece is the poetic Flacco pushback you included in the competitor script. Whether you like him or not, he represents a specific archetype in hip-hop media right now, the narrative DJ. The guy who doesn't just react to news, he tries to steer what the audience is allowed to believe about the news. In those clips, he's basically arguing that the idea of Drake paying for some kind of narrative manipulation against certain people is absurd, or that Glass is spiraling, or that it's not rational to think Drake would even care enough to do it. But here's the problem with that argument, and I need y'all to really sit with this. You don't have to believe the most extreme version of an allegation to recognize the mechanism exists. PR exists, image management exists, paid placement exists, relationships between artists and platforms exist, selective signal boosting exists, and on top of that, fan bases themselves do unpaid PR every day because they're emotionally invested. So when Flacco says Drake doesn't have to pay for media manipulation, he accidentally admits the most important part. The manipulation can be organic. It can be done by disciples, by adjacent pages, by people chasing access, by people chasing clicks.
That's why the "did he pay" question is sometimes a distraction. The real question is, does the ecosystem reward people for steering stories in his favor? And the answer is obviously yes. Second cultural piece is the Kid Mero-style reaction to how artists talk online when they're mad. In the competitor script, there's a segment where Mero is basically clowning how reckless it is for someone to post retaliation-coded stuff publicly, and how dumb it is to put certain things on IG stories like it's a group chat. That matters because it's an adult-in-the-room moment. Even if you think all of this is overblown, the cultural veterans are telling you the same thing. Stop treating serious accusations like content. Stop talking like the internet is a closed circle. It's not. It's a surveillance machine, and every post becomes permanent evidence in somebody's hands, whether that's a lawyer, a journalist, or an enemy. And third cultural piece is the fan community behavior itself. Go look at how these conversations move. On one side, you've got people saying Glasses Malone is clout chasing, and on the other side, you've got people saying he must have seen something because they assume everyone in media has DMs full of allegations. And that part is true in a general sense. Media people do get sent wild claims all the time. The nuance is most of it never gets posted because it can't be verified, or because posting it creates legal risk, or because it's unethical. So when somebody does go public, it creates a split. Either they're being brave or they're being irresponsible. And the most dangerous thing is when the audience decides it's brave just because it supports their side. Now let me add the counter-argument for credibility, because I know exactly what the stands will say. If it's real, why not show proof right now? Why do the warnings sound like teasing? That's fair. If you're alleging something serious, you should be careful. You should be precise. You should qualify what you know versus what you suspect. And in a perfect world, you either bring receipts or you keep it to yourself. But here's where that counter-argument collapses in the real world. The internet doesn't reward caution. It rewards implication. It rewards "I know something." It rewards
outrage, and it rewards fan bases turning maybe into confirmed overnight. So even if Glasses is wrong, the cultural harm is still happening because the machine is already moving. And if he's right, the harm is even bigger because now you've got people daring him to pull the pin out of a grenade on camera. And that's the gear shift moment, because up until now, you could pretend this is just personalities beefing. But the real story is the system that turns allegations into content, content into leverage, and leverage into money. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. So let's pattern interrupt, because we're not doing team sports commentary anymore. This is business, optics, and incentives. First systemic angle is the media economy. Hip-hop commentary in 2025 is not just a guy with an opinion, it's a marketplace. Clips are currency, outrage is currency, access is currency. And when you have an artist as big as Drake, he becomes the most profitable keyword on the board. That means even people who claim they don't care will still orbit him because the algorithm cares. It's not personal, it's math. Now add the incentive structure. If you're a small platform, the fastest way to grow is to attach yourself to a giant story. If you're a mid-sized platform, the fastest way to stay relevant is to keep feeding the story. If you're a large platform, the fastest way to protect relationships is to frame the story in a way that doesn't burn your bridges. So you end up with a spectrum of manipulation that doesn't require a secret check being written. The manufactured part can be as simple as selective attention. You highlight one claim, you ignore another. You platform one person, you dismiss another. You call one thing allegations and another thing facts, even though neither has paperwork. That's why I call some of these people narrative DJs. They're not reporting, they're mixing. Second systemic angle is the legal and reputational risk economy, and this is where the stop asking for evidence warning starts making cold sense. In real life, evidence doesn't just appear in a tweet thread like a magic trick. Evidence appears through reporting, through documentation, through people going on record, or through legal processes. And legal processes are ugly. If somebody makes a claim that crosses into defamation territory, one of the first things lawyers look at is what exactly was said, what can be proven, and what damages can be argued. Now here's where the fans get stupid and accidentally self-sabotage. When you publicly beg for receipts, you're not just daring a podcaster to talk. You're escalating the situation toward the only places where receipts actually get forced out. Lawsuits, subpoenas, discovery, depositions, document requests, communications being reviewed, timelines being pinned down. That's not internet tea. that's careers and bank accounts. And I'm not saying Drake is filing anything. I'm not saying Glasses is filing anything. I'm saying the fan base's behavior pushes everything in that direction. Because when you create a climate where everyone is yelling, "Prove it," the next logical step is somebody trying to prove it in a way that can withstand legal pressure. That means naming sources. That means producing messages. That means putting people in positions where they have to either back down publicly or escalate privately. And if you think that ends clean, you're living in fantasy land. Now connect that back to Drake specifically, the Spreadsheet 6 version of him. Drake is a brand. He's an international product with relationships, partnerships, and a reputation that has to be managed at scale. So even if 90% of the internet allegations are nonsense, his team still has to think like risk managers. What's the exposure? What's the narrative? What's the blowback? What's the cost of letting something trend unanswered? That's why you see subtweets, strategic silence, carefully timed drops, friendly platforms, friendly questions, and sometimes the fan base acting like a volunteer PR army. The owl doesn't need to call everybody personally. The system already incentivizes people to protect the brand. And that's the part fans don't want to admit, because it makes them look played. If the system rewards defending Drake, then the Drake fans' scary warning isn't just about them being aggressive, it's about them being useful. They're doing labor for free, and when someone like Glasses says, "Stop pushing me," he's basically saying, y'all are trying to turn this into something it doesn't have to be, and if it becomes that, you don't get to act innocent. Which brings me to the truth bomb, because this is the payoff that ties the Rocky clip, the Glasses warning, and the Stan behavior into one ugly conclusion. The reason people are warning Drake fans to stop asking for allegation evidence isn't because evidence would automatically destroy Drake. It's because the demand for evidence is a trap that drags everyone into a mutually assured destruction scenario where the process becomes the punishment. Let me say that cleaner. When you demand proof in public, you're not just asking for clarity. You're encouraging a public escalation where somebody eventually tries to prove something in a way that creates permanent consequences. And those consequences don't land neatly on your favorite villain. They land on everybody. On the person making the claim because now they're exposed to lawsuits, credibility collapse, and real-life pressure. On the person being accused because now their name is attached to allegedly forever, even if nothing is confirmed. On the platforms because now they're complicit in spreading something they can't verify. And on the fan base, because now they've helped create a climate where every rumor becomes a weapon, which makes the culture more paranoid, more violent in language, and more likely to produce real-world fallout.
That's why Glass's posture reads like a warning. He's basically saying, if I speak, you might get what you asked for, but you won't like the cost. And that cost might not even be the truth. The cost might be chaos. It might be people turning internet narratives into street narratives. It might be legal warfare. It might be collateral damage where the loudest stands disappear the moment anything becomes real. And Rocky's fight clip fits because it's the same audience appetite. People don't just want art anymore. They want a consequence. They want a humiliation. They want a spectacle. And when you combine that with a propaganda-shaped media ecosystem, you end up with a culture where fans are basically trying to summon a real-world event out of a comment section. Allegedly, reportedly, maybe, who knows, but the direction is obvious. So the scary warning isn't stop asking because Drake is innocent or stop asking because Drake is guilty. The scary warning is stop asking because you're turning a messy internet era into an era where proof gets forced out the hard way. And the hard way never ends with just one person getting embarrassed. It ends with everybody losing control of the story. And here's the part that's going to irritate the Spreadsheet 6 crowd. If you really cared about truth, you would demand standards across the board. You would demand that your own side stop spreading nonsense. You would stop treating narratives like sport. But a lot of stands don't want truth. They want to win. And the moment winning becomes more important than reality, you become the easiest group in the world to manipulate because you'll amplify whatever helps you and bury whatever hurts you. Now, let's land this the right way, because I don't do these videos just to watch people spiral. If there's a hero in this whole dynamic, it's not even a person as much as it's a principle. Discipline wins long term, and manufactured hype always shows its seams. Look at how the culture actually moves. The stuff that lasts is the stuff that travels without an instruction manual. That's why Kendrick Lamar stays dangerous in these conversations, because whether you love him or hate him, his moments don't need a defense team. They stand up on their own. Meanwhile, the more Drake's loudest supporters try to litigate every opinion like it's a trial, the more they reveal insecurity. Because confident winners don't spend all day demanding affidavits from strangers on the internet. They play the record and keep it pushing. And this is where I circle back to two moments from today. One, the Glasses Malone warning. Even if you think he's wrong, his warning exposes the tension. Fans keep trying to force an escalation because they think escalation equals clarity. But escalation doesn't equal clarity. Escalation equals fire. Two, the Rocky clip. A playful fight question becomes a cultural spark because the audience is primed for confrontation. That's not healthy. That's not even hip-hop. That's spectators trying to turn artists into avatars for their own aggression. Here's the contrast that says it all in one line. Real legacy doesn't need a rumor campaign, but rumor campaigns always need a fan base willing to do the dirty work. So if you're watching this and you're a Drake fan, I'm not telling you to stop being a fan. I'm telling you to stop being a foot soldier. Stop begging for evidence like you're immune to what happens when people actually start providing it. And if you're on the other side, stop treating every insinuation as a victory lap, because the culture doesn't get better when we replace music critique with conspiracy blood sport. Controlled optimism time. The good news is the audience is starting to see through it. More people are calling out reckless posting. More people are calling out narrative spinning. More people are realizing that numbers without cultural weight is just spreadsheet cosplay. And once that shift happens, the people who built their whole identity on being the loudest defender of a brand are going to feel lost because the culture is going to move on without them. And this is only the start, because the next phase of this story is going to be about accountability, not just jokes. If Glasses Malone keeps doubling down, either he tightens up and qualifies everything carefully, or he's going to face real pressure to substantiate what he's implying. If the Stan ecosystem keeps pushing "prove it," they're going to keep forcing the conversation toward legal and real-world consequences. And if more artists keep making these little fight and pull-up comments for content, the platforms are going to keep turning it into a spectacle until somebody finally regrets it. So do me a favor, if you want the next update, when the next clip drops, when the next space happens, or when somebody actually tries to turn allegedly into documented, make sure you're subscribed, because you already know how fast the narrative flips overnight. And also, I need you to tell me in the comments, honestly, do you think Drake's fan base is asking for evidence because they want truth or because they want a moment they can weaponize? And if you want a video that connects directly to this, the next one you should watch is the breakdown on how hip-hop media pages and streamer culture can manufacture a winner in real time without ever touching the music. Because once you see the mechanics of that machine, you'll understand why the loudest people online are always the easiest to steer, and why the next headline is already being engineered before you even wake up tomorrow.